Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8-5, and 8-5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go. I copied a while ago, 1 Charlie transmission that my thing used, and 8-5, this is 7 November, Charlie. Now 1 Charlie, 7 November, go.
This is 1 Charlie, reference to your last, you're Brandon 158, extra 5 500, 1200 between teams, and local. Also request 3 units take inbound message to see if we can try to get Whiskey 9 and 8 for pause with the playground.
And this is 7 November, Roger, stand by.
Got that.
Got it? Alright. And all units, this is 7 November Golf. My unit Alpha, Echo, X-ray Alpha, Alpha in there.
One Charlie, Alpha Bravo.
Hey, I never took a dip. I forgot to take a dip.
Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9, Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. This is Whiskey 9, go. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9, Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. This is Whiskey 9, go. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. November 8-5, and 8-5, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go.
All right, welcome to another live stream at the CivDiv. If our audio is good, let us know down in the chat. Today we have VA accredited attorney Andy with us. Andy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, my name's Andy Gross. I run my own firm out of Baltimore, Maryland, or Towson, Maryland, just north of the city. I've been doing this for a couple years. I used to be a judge advocate on active duty, and I fell into this practice when someone came through the doors of my firm who had been at the same unit I was in, and I realized this is what I wanted to do. So here we are.
Question for you. What service were you in?
Army.
All right. I won't hold it against you, okay?
No,
all right. Starting with Chris, he says, can't wait for this one to start. This is going to be solid. Note-taking gear. Everybody, I assume you mean nobody move, but welcome to the live, Chris. Appreciate it. D-Dog, if your service-connected disability is static, does that make the secondary disability from that condition static? Andy, what do you have on that?
Not automatically. Could be, could be not. But quite frankly, most disabilities end up being static anyway, but probably not. Because
100%.
Because it's actually, each disability is rated it's separately on its own. What winds up happening is that the concept of secondary versus direct is only how you got to service connection in the first place, but it is an independent disability.
Absolutely. And I would actually argue there's no correlation between one being static and one not being static. It's its own thing.
Correct. Bingo.
All right. Mimi NG, we'll just leave the name at that. Thanks for all the info and all you do to help out vets. What's the best way to go about claiming mental health for a training accident that resulted in a few soldiers' death? Andy, what do you have on that?
Okay, so I would say ordinarily you file a claim with a statement in support of claim explaining what happened, right? Now, PTSD, they often like to see the special statement in support of claim for PTSD, but really just a statement in support of claim. Honestly, a letter would do the trick too. Just something explaining what happens, so the VA can then go to the Records Research Center and pull up that information about the incident. That being said, if you've already filed a claim and received a decision for a mental health condition, you can't file a claim. You have to file a supplemental claim, which is just a different form.
Yeah. And I have tons of questions for this, Mimi. We'll just call you that. When did this happen? How much time went by? Like, did this happen in the 80s and now you're trying to submit the claim? What's the continuity of care like? There's tons of questions that myself and Andy would have. And really, without seeing the evidence, it's almost impossible to give you accurate advice. But from what we have right here, I think what Andy said is absolutely spot on.
Spot on. Absolutely.
All right, USMC Big B, welcome to another live. He's a longtime fan of the show here. I've been told that 40% is the highest you can get for a back without surgery, but my back is getting so bad. I literally haven't been able to walk for the last 3 days. Can I get higher than 40%? Yes or no? What do you have?
Short answer is yes. So I got to take a look at the rating schedule for this because I don't have it memorized. And what would actually probably end up getting you that rating, there's two ways of rating backs, right? There's a range of motion test, and then there's something called invertebral disc syndrome. And if I'm not pronouncing that right, I'm sorry, IVDS for short.
IVDS, yeah.
And IVDS is rated based on the days of incapacitating episodes that where a doctor orders bed rest in any given year. Now, obviously, there might not be a great record of a doctor saying you've got bed rest now every time you need it. But again, documenting that the amount of time where you're on bed rest, which is kind of sounding like where you are right now, that is important to get that higher rating. But yeah, there are a lot of people with messed up backs who are in the 10s and 20s percentiles. I will say this though, one of the most critical things with lumbar spine, or really any spinal ratings, are the radiculopathy claims that flow from it, right?
Absolutely.
I see a lot of folks with 10% ratings on the back because they got some range of motion, but the nerves are getting squished and their legs have all sorts of nerve problems because of it. So you might have like a 10% rating in your back, but then 20 or 30% for each leg because of how bad the radiculopathy, which is that nerve damage or nerve impingement, is going.
Oh, yeah. And I'd also like to add to that, you can see Big B is we're assuming the lumbar spine, which is the lower area of your back. It could very well be your cervical spine too, which then again could lead to nerve damage in your arms. So depending on where we're talking about in your back, it could be higher than 40 overall. If you're looking at over 40% for your back specifically, in the 38 CFR, it talks about ankylosis, which is the loss of use. Now, you say that you haven't been able to walk for the past 3 days, which that does rate. My number one advice would be go talk to a provider, right? Get that in evidence. Depending on how bad your spine is, you possibly could. I will say it's not common, right? You're really looking at like someone who's been paralyzed. That would be a reason to get over 40% for obvious reasons.
Well, and then there's also a consideration, depending on so eventually for some folks, their spinal condition gets so bad that they're no longer walking around, and they might need aid and attendance, special monthly compensation. It's a little rare, thank goodness. But if you start needing a lot of help around the house because you can't put on your pants, you need to bathe with help, whatever, you might need a special monthly compensation realm as well. It really depends on your functional capability at that point.
Oh, yeah. That is a great point. We have our first donation of the day here, which is a big one. This normally does not happen. But Greg with a $100 donation. Just to some backstory, I started doing shirts and hats. Greg had purchased some shirts and hats and asked if he could pay via donation. Absolutely. Greg, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I definitely appreciate that. Especially with a big fat one that you got going on here. Okay. Let's scroll back up to Jack Garrett. He says, I am here. Welcome to the live. I'm glad you came. Secret Sauce says, use Dr. Sharma's IMO and DBQs for 3 secondaries. VA still schedules CMP exams for each condition. That's common. Along with blood work. Pretty nervous. I've never been to a CMP exam. All right. Tons of questions. My first questions are, what are the conditions, right? And what are they secondary to? But as far as the C&P exam, it's very common for the VA to schedule that. It's even with an IMO and DBQ. But I will say this secret sauce, since I know Dr. Sharma, he's not going to write something without evidence. And so I'm going to assume your evidence will speak for itself. And so, Andy, do you have anything to add to that?
No, so I'm not, don't want to log roll for Prashant over here. Dr. Sharma is a great guy. Another guy right here in Baltimore with me. And he writes a solid DBQ and I've sent him cases where he's like, I don't see it. And so he's written something pretty solid. The VA has a tendency though, when you submit IMOs or private DBQs, the VA don't care. They will go and get their hack doctor contractors to go write another C&P exam. I think a good practice is to take that IMO with you to the C&P exam, because you can sort of pitch it and say, hey, C&P doctor, I just made your job easier. All you got to do is cut and paste. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So, you kind of, and it takes, for someone, Dr. Green would say Dr. Sharma, like an NP. I mean, there's some deference there. So I do like taking, if I'm going to use an IMO, I do like having my clients take that into the exam with them when the VA ultimately does what we call developing to deny. It's not really proper usually. Just to come with the receipts, as the kids say these days. Now, I will say this though. I don't always do IMOs in my cases. I do maybe 10, 20% of my cases. I actually do an IMO. And the reason I do that is because I have seen so many cases where we present a Loctite solid IMO and the VA goes, yeah, sorry. And I usually try to get the VA to get there on their own. When I do spend the money on an IMO, I'm working with a client who's spending money on an IMO. I said, listen, this is part of a larger strategy. This is not the silver to the werewolf or silver to the vampire. I don't know what kills werewolves, but like, this is not the easy button. This might help your case along, but like, be prepared for the long fight. So, best of luck to you though. I mean, like I said, his product's good. It's just the VA can be the VA.
I agree with everything you said. And to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, veterans don't need the IMO. The dilemma with IMOs is you have to have evidence for a good IMO. But if you have the evidence, logically, the VA should be able to connect it themselves.
You can't build a building without the foundation.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. All right, Florida Marine, another longtime fan of the show. Welcome back. He says, when is the appropriate time to get an attorney involved? First denial, higher level review, after submental. Andy, 100% in your lane. Take it away.
So this might be bad for business, but it depends. It depends on what the condition is, where you're at. Do you feel comfortable keeping going on this? What's the file look like? I think that I add value to most cases in most circumstances, but a lot of times I'm just not necessary, right? It really depends on the circumstance. If your case is a little complicated, if you've been fighting the VA for a while, like you've gone back and forth between higher level supplemental, BVA, like maybe it's time to call an attorney to get some strategy on it. But if you filed your first claim and you got a denial and you realize maybe there's some more evidence you could throw in there, maybe you don't need to hire an attorney right away. It really depends on your comfort level.
One thing I will add to that, in your defense, Andy, is if you are leaning towards paying a claims consulting company, which I never recommend ever under any circumstance, if that's okay with you, then just get an attorney. Okay, if you're fighting in appeals, go that route. If you're going to pay someone who's accredited. I'd much rather see that versus paying someone who doesn't have access to your claims file, so to speak.
Or has any ethical obligation to you whatsoever.
Or that, yeah.
Not just do I lose my VA accreditation if I do something unethical. I could lose my bar license, right? Like I also have malpractice insurance. I have a fiduciary obligation to you. The claims consultants, they don't owe you crap.
Nothing.
Right? They don't I have a couple cases right now where I found like 6 figures of back pay claims consultants would have never gotten to, because they don't have they're just worried about what they can get out of you going forward. I'm looking at like how long the VA has been screwing you over and seeing what we can get on your effective date. So that's why I think I have value in claims consultant. But quite frankly, you don't always need an attorney.
Yeah. More fire to fan towards you. We have Dr. Sharma on here. It's his first time commenting ever. He says, hopping on here to say Andy is amazing. I've worked with him on cases many times. Thanks for what you do, Andy. And thank you, Clay, for everything you do as well. Thank you so much, Doc. Definitely appreciate you hopping in and saying hi. All right. Going to B-Buck. B-Buck says, hey, CivDiv, hope all is good. A long-time fan of the show. Thank you, B-Buck. B-Buck has a wood shop, workshop. The link will be in the description if you want to support a small veteran business. All right. Joseph B says, let's go. Let's do it. Okay. Government lacking. How long for supplemental appeals? Been waiting for an answer on an apnea claim since March. What's the deal? Go ahead.
The VA can't keep employees. That's a big one. So yeah, no, I'm closing out some supplemental claims from October of last year. I don't have the secret sauce to make things move faster, but what I did notice actually recently, and I brought this to the VA's attention, is that there were cases. So inside the VA's like data, like you see the VA app, that is not really a good window into what's going on inside. The VA has like a whole different thing behind a firewall, and I'm not using that term correctly if there are any computer nerds out there, but they have a whole different thing on the VA servers that I have access to because I'm an accredited attorney. And there were cases in the status where it's like, oh, we're waiting for this piece of evidence to come in, and the evidence had come in, but the case hadn't rolled over into ready for decision. I found that out, and I started like pinging them, and I started making the VA aware of it, and they started like flipping the switch so it would turn to ready for decision. So that might be part of it. Like if you've been to your CMP exam and it's been months and nothing's changed after the CMP exam, might be time to call the VA and just be like, hey, what's up? Did my CMP exam results come back in? There's a decent chance the person on the other end of the phone on the call center has no idea what's going on or what you're talking about because they are horribly undertrained, but they will record that in there as a statement of contact, which sometimes triggers more stuff to be done. So if it's been a while since the CMP exam and nothing's happening, call that 1-800-827, was it 827-1000?
It's the 1000. Yep.
Yeah, Google it. I don't know the number offhand. So,
all right. Jason Dean says QTC is so frustrating. Just got off the phone with them. I wouldn't just narrow it down to QTC. I would say contracted CMP exams.
They all suck.
Yeah. They're not, let's just be real. It's government contracting. I was a government contractor, not for CMP exams, but long story short, they're not paying top dollar, right? We'll just keep it at that. All right. Robert Truslow says, how do I claim asbestos exposure?
This is an excellent question, right? So asbestos exposure, PACT Act, and Agent Orange are not disabilities. Mm-hmm. They are the things that cause the disabilities or the method of service connection. So with asbestos exposure, we have a lot of different things that can happen after that. You can develop asbestosis, various breathing conditions. So you don't claim asbestos exposure, you actually claim whatever the condition is. If it's, if you have asthma or some sort of respiratory condition, or heaven forbid mesothelioma or some sort of lung cancer, you claim that because asbestos exposure in and of itself is not a claim. Like you wouldn't claim Agent Orange, you'd claim diabetes, bladder cancer,
hypertension,
Parkinson's, hypertension, what have you. So if you have one of those conditions, if you have a condition that is caused, again, you need a current condition, whatever your current condition is, if you tie it to asbestos exposure, that's what you claim. And pro tip, when you're claiming asbestos exposure, it really helps if you write a statement in support of claim discussing what you did to get that asbestos exposure. I was on XYZ ship. I did asbestos remediation in this building, on this base, on these dates. And we didn't wear much PPE because, again, it may or may not be in your records. all the details. So,
especially looking at, generally speaking, helping veterans with asbestos, it's from the 80s or 90s or earlier. And so the record keeping system wasn't as good as it is now. And I would say now it's even shaky, which just implies that it was really bad then. So is asbestos exposure in your records? Probably not. Are there any, question for you, Andy, are there any other forms of evidence besides a statement that you would recommend a veteran submit? Maybe like an article about a ship having asbestos? What does that look like?
Yeah. So there are a couple different places you can go for this stuff, right? So first, just Google your ship and asbestos, right? The USS Minnow. I don't know, right? Right. Gilligan and his asbestos, right? So Google USS Minnow asbestos. You'll probably get a law firm that has a website on it. You might also want to like asbestos, whatever your base that you were on, that you're exposed to. And there might be an article or an EPA environmental report or a Superfund site thing. Just hit print, right? Now, this is the big thing that a lot of people don't understand with the PACT Act are the TARA exams, right? So PACT Act did a couple really big things. One of them was make a whole bunch of conditions presumptive if you've been in the Middle East from like 1990 on forward, right? Big deal. TARA basically said, hey, VA, anytime, what you're going to do is you're going to catalog all of the toxic exposures the veteran has had. And then you're going to, did I just make it do a thumbs up? I don't know how it happened there. But anyway, you're going to catalog all of the toxic exposure the veteran had during their time in service. And then you're going to order an exam based on those toxic exposures and what happened. Now, these TARA, like the VA has had a hell of a time generating these TARA memos. It has been like, they are not doing it right. We know this. The VA knows this. They're trying their best, which very low bar, right? But they've been trying. And what you can do as a veteran is kind of help the VA get there. I know they're supposed to help you, help the VA get there, get those. This is a great idea. Glad you brought it up, but start Googling the articles, hit print screen and upload that as a PDF to your claims file, pointing out to connect the breadcrumbs. Like, hey, I was at this base had asbestos. Yeah. Same thing.
Make it as easy as possible.
This base was a Superfund site. I now have cancer. Connect it together.
There we go. All right. Thank you for that. That's definitely the best asbestos exposure PACT Act explanation I've ever heard. So Joe B says, I was recently diagnosed with tension headaches. Is that the same claim as migraine? So for VA benefit purposes, it's going to be rated together. Okay. Now, are tension headaches and migraines different? Absolutely. It's more of a symptomology thing. Andy, what do you have on that?
So as far as the VA cares, same thing, right? So if you were denied migraines, you would file a supplemental claim for headaches, formally claimed as migraines. The VA may kick that back. I've been getting a lot of letters kicked back saying you need to file the right form. And I'm like, I did file the right form. I know what I'm doing. And then you can get it usually accepted. Pro tip though, and I have a video on this on my YouTube channel. The VA sucks at rating headaches. And the reason 100%. They suck at rating headaches is because the form, the DBQ and the language in there uses this term called prostrating, right? Which means lay down. But they don't use it in any normal way, right? And the neurologists there don't understand it. So a 10% and 30% rating are what they call characteristically prostrating. Doesn't mean you have to lay down. It means that it's disruptive of your day-to-day routine. And then you're talking about frequency. Now, the 50% rating is when it's completely prostrating, meaning that you can't do anything. And you got to just go somewhere in a dark room for a while. And you in characteristic of economic inadaptability, that's a mouthful. It's a total word salad. But what that means is you're missing work because of your headaches. Mm-hmm. So if you are missing work because of your headaches, document. Start keeping a headache diary. You can do this Migraine Buddy, or you can just do it. Just get a notebook and keep it next to your nightstand, right? And then when it's time, when you submit your claim or supplemental claim, what have you, or request for increase for your headaches, submit that diary, to the VA, bring it with you to your claim and pension exam, for the headaches. And then that way, hopefully they'll give you the right rating. And then of course you have to like make sure that it came out correctly on the other end, because I've seen folks who've missed tons of work and the VA is like 0%. So in that case, you got to file an appeal.
Oh yeah. I can't tell you how many veterans I've recommended to just do a higher level review on a migraine claim because they had a migraine log. They shared that log with their primary care. They were prescribed medication. They've been re-upping that medication. All of that is indicative of migraines, at least at 10%, at the very minimum. But it's very common. And I'll say this goes for every claim. Evidence will be your saving grace every single time. Don't submit a claim without evidence. You're asking to get slapped.
But, and I'll add a caveat to that, just because you submit evidence doesn't mean the VA reads it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So as an attorney, a lot of what I'll do a lot of evidence development where I'll help the client like, hey, we need to add these pieces to the puzzle so the VA can do it. We'll add all the evidence in the world to make it a lock solid case. And the VA goes, nah, don't think so. Right. And that point, you got to take it up to the BVA. Maybe you can get lucky on a higher level review if you've got a good decision review officer. I know a couple good decision review officers. I've met a couple not so great decision review officers, but I'll tell you, like, evidence. You got to build up that file with evidence. Full stop.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Edwin says, if you appeal a condition, I assume you mean higher level review, can you change that appeal to a submental and not lose your original application date? This is 100% in your lane when it comes to appeals and back pay. Take it away.
It depends. Next question. No. So this is a really, it depends what you did here, right? So now the law, again, I say the law, and I say it this way because like the VA doesn't always run on law. Sometimes it's like just vibes, right? So as the kids say, I'm like a 40-year-old man, like saying just vibes. Like I have no business saying that, but the VA says that the law states you can change lanes. Now, practically speaking, so if you file a Board of Veterans Appeals appeal and you're like, no, I want to pull it out of the BVA and go back to a supplemental, theoretically you can by filing a motion to withdraw and then refiling a supplemental claim within 1 year of the date of the decision. So here's an example, right? February 1st, I get a bad decision. February 15th, I file to the Board of Veterans Appeals for whatever the condition is, appealing whatever. 2 months go by. I'm like, you know what? I want to file a supplemental claim instead. I file a motion to withdraw. If it takes the VA until March 30th of the following year to act on that motion to withdraw, it's now too late to file a supplemental claim. Theoretically, you can ask the VA to extend that deadline for you, but I wouldn't count on it, right? Like that is a very tricky thing to do. It's a very situation dependent, very fact dependent, but I hear you because the Board of Veterans Appeals has a brutal backlog, and sometimes it's not. Go.
It sucks. That's probably the worst appeal. As far as time is concerned. All right. Virgil says, Clayton, I had 3 claims I put in. 2 I have had the CMP, all secondary to service-connected claims. 1 rescheduling, the other for diabetic neuropathy. Have not heard anything. Sent in medical records from the VA. Could they rule on this without a CMP exam? I'm be honest with you. Technically speaking, I mean, yes. Is that going to happen? Probably not. I would actually bet my life it's probably not. But technically speaking, that answer is yes.
By the way, you do not have to send in VA medical records. Yeah. This is a big one, right? I've gotten so many claims files where the veteran sent in 1,000 pages of VA medical records, and then the VA goes and clicks 3 buttons and then just downloads the VA medical records themselves. You can just tell the VA you have VA medical records, and the VA should be pulling those into the file on their own. So you don't need to go to the VA Medical Center or the blue button or anything like that. If it's a federal government record, if it's Department of Defense or VA, the VA can pull those in themselves. You just have to tell the VA that they exist.
All right. And back to USMC Big B, he said he has degenerative disc disease. I assume that's what you're implying, and not IBDS. In that case, USMC Big B, it's probably range of motion, which would then give you the radiculopathy claims. Side note, when you're rated on incapacitating episodes, you are not able to do radiculopathy claims. Keep that in mind if that applies to you. It's not really common.
Well, there's a caveat. They can also separately apply for radiculopathy claims if there's a service connected, like some sort of other issue as well. They're not going to rate you on. They're not going to give you a rating for range of motion and IVDS at the same time, but they might still give you that radiculopathy if they're tying it back to the same condition. It gets weird.
All right.
So,
Cheeto says, if VA accredited attorney takes your appeal after denial, does that mean he sees the case?
Is that icon?
First of all, you have a hilarious profile.
I'm just going to move on from what that profile pic is. So, so here's the thing. I don't take cases that I don't think I have a chance at because we get paid on contingency. I can't take any money if I don't make any money on your case if I don't see something. So chances are the answer is yes.
All right. And Trinity, who's a new member of the channel, thank you very much for that, Trinity. Let me scroll down just to make sure you don't have a chat that we missed. I don't see anything. If you do, please throw it down there. We will absolutely get to it. And if not, let me scroll all the way back up. There's tons of questions, by the way. Okay. P-High Marine. Should an IBS claim be filed on its own with the PACT Act, or is it better to file secondary to my 70% service-connected PTSD? What do you have, Andy?
I'm going to blow your mind and change the way you think about this, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%. I totally
agree.
Basically,
it doesn't matter. It did matter if you applied before August 14th, 2023, where there was an effective date thing, but it really doesn't matter because secondary, and people get wrapped around the axle on this, like, oh, should I apply for this condition, a secondary to this condition? The VA has a duty, and this is right in the CFR and in the M21. The VA has a duty to analyze every theory of service connection reasonably raised by the record. So they're looking at their IBS because of toxic exposure, IBS as secondary for PTSD. Does it happen? Hell no, it does not happen. So you got to figure out, because for some reason, when the VA sends these, and I just recorded a video on this actually, when the VA sends an exam request in, they tend to only ask like one theory of service connection at a time, but it can be a whole bunch of different things that can cause your IBS that can be service connected. I mean, I have a client who has like 6 different service connected reasons why he might have sleep apnea, right? Like burn pits, asthma, neck problems, which actually can lead to sleep apnea, TBI, right? Like, and the VA is like asking one question at a time, and the rater's like, I don't think it's because of this. I don't think it's because of that. They're not asking like, hey, doctor, is it any of these conditions or a combination of these conditions? As likely as it is not. That's not happening. This is a major structural problem with the VA, but it doesn't really matter unless you have an intent to file in prior to August 14th, 2024, in which case you want to see if they'll give you the PACT Act effective date. But if you're saying like, so then you might want to try to strategize, might not ultimately matter. It just, if you don't have an intent to file in and you're applying today, my suggestion would be to someone in this situation, you apply for it or file a supplemental claim if you've been previously denied for it. And you note PACT Act or secondary to this or secondary to that or direct, right? So yeah.
Absolutely, all the way. Real quick, Andy, if someone wanted to reach out to you via email, how would they get a hold of you?
So call my office, 410-846-0740. What they'll do is they'll put you in my system and we'll schedule a consult. that way. I am booked a little bit further out right now, but we'll fit you in as long you just see the intake process through there, or you can go to my website APGrossLaw.com. There should be a consult form in the contact section. That's usually
all
it.
right. Real quick, that was 410-846-0740.
Yes.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, 443-846-0740. Did I say 410 first time?
You did. All right. You said 443?
443-846-0740.
All right. There we go. Just to make sure. There it is.
Long
All
day.
right. Edwin comes back with, can the VA hold the amount of years after you get out if you don't claim a condition that you reported before you got out? I assume you're talking about the automatic intent to file date within that 1 year time frame. That's what I assume your question is.
Yeah,
and
I
if
don't
you go past that, the answer is no.
So now, yeah, you have 1 year from the time you get out to get that earlier effective date. The longer you wait, though, the more likely the VA is to hold it against you, saying, "Oh, you got out 10 years ago, and this is the first time you're complaining about your knee since then."
Absolutely.
It's technically not what they're supposed to do, but they do it 5,000 times a day. So,
absolutely. All right. MK Ultra Vibe says, what can an attorney do for me if the VA says I'm missing about 10 years of civilian records that I can't attain due to them being dearly read and doctors no longer practicing? The records are gone.
The records are gone. You can't get them because the records are just missing. So if the records are missing, right, and you can't get the records at all, because the doctor's out of business, what have you, you can, write a statement of support of claim talking about the fact that you went to this doctor for this condition. I mean, we can't make records materialize out of thin air. So you can write a statement of support of claim saying you went to the doctor for this condition. They saw you for this condition. You can start getting buddy statements from other people. Like, yeah, my wife knows that I went to physical therapy for my shoulder for 6 months back in 1988, back when it flared up, right? Like, you can sort of create the records around the records. Do so with integrity, though. Like, don't lie. Like, don't lie. But that's it. Like, again, medical records like disappearing from doctors who are out of practice is a real problem, and it's not great.
No, I mean, it sucks. I guess there's no real better way to say that.
But you can, like I said, you create the records around the records, right? People saying that you went to the doctor, corroborating your story. The VA does have to take that into consideration.
All right. Question for you. Do I pay my attorney if I filed my claim 6 months before that attorney was hired?
So I don't understand the question entirely because we're missing some pieces. If you file a claim and this is the first claim you filed a claim and you hire an attorney, well, attorneys don't get paid on initial claims. Now, the way I get paid and the way that I do a lot of small cases, but the way I really get paid and the way I'm able to pay my staff is when I take a case and the case backdates before I was even a lawyer, right? So like I had a client who filed a claim in 2003, got denied. There were some issues. Reapplied in 2019, got granted in 2021, 2022, said, I think my back pay is wrong. I think he got like a weird effective date. And he said, oh, I think I need to go back to 2019. I found a very specific reason. This doesn't happen often, called the reasonably encompassed claims rule. And we were able to thread the needle and get part of the claim backdated 2003. I was still in college in 2003, right?
That's a lot.
Right. Oh, I got one. I think I'm going to go back to 1989. So yeah, that guy filed a claim long before they hired me, but I was able to get them all that back pay. So yeah, we don't start the date that you hire us. We look to go as far back as possible. And the reason, and think about this too, right? if you only start paying me the day you hire me, I don't have any incentive to move that case fast, right? Like, I move cases fast because I got staff to pay today, right? Like, I got Sally Mae to pay today. So if you hire an attorney, we get 20% of the back pay that going as far back as we can get it to go back. And that's why we dig through files. Like, it takes me between 4 and 8 hours to go through a claims file to get a thorough analysis of what's going on. So that's, that's just before I file an appeal, just to figure out what's going on. So, but no one's ever complained about my fee when I get them like $100,000 in back pay. They didn't know they were owed. So
that's life-changing money right there. All right. MJ says in VBMS, which is the system the VA uses, it says medical opinion only, no in-person exam, but OptumServe says they are in-person exams. Will I not have to do a CMP exam for some of these conditions? First off, I want to know what you submitted for, and it would be weird if every single one of those was not an in-person exam. It's definitely possible, depending on what you claimed. But my first question is really, how do you know what's in VBMS? That's really what I want to know. I assume your VSL told you that. Andy, what do you have for this?
So yeah, it depends. I mean, it might be medical opinion only if you already have like a DBQ and they just need to do another medical opinion. I saw that a lot after the PACT Act, where like they would have a case and they would need a new medical opinion because they didn't order a Terra medical opinion based on the toxic exposure risk activity. So that can happen. It really just, it depends on the circumstances. And sometimes they just do records reviews exams where you don't have to appear at all. It really just depends. Sometimes the VA fails to order exams when they should, and sometimes they order exams when they shouldn't too. It's all over the place.
Absolutely. All right. Jason Dean says, just got QTC exam set up for COP-D, which is a PACT Act presumptive, assuming you meet the time criteria. Numbness of neck and arms, all new claims. That was a nerve damage we were talking about earlier. You wish DAV filed numbness as secondary to spine, like they sent 8,000 pages to them, but not from both VAs. A little confused on that last part there. Andy, what do you have for this?
So, Jason, the VA has the duty to assess every condition based on all theories reasonably raised by the record. So if you have a neck problem, they should be assessing your numb arms to your neck problem. If there is another type of reason for that neuropathy raised by the records, they should assess that as well. The problem is that the VA doesn't do any kind of medical pre-screen. They rely on like a GS5 VSR to go figure out what questions to ask the doctors, right?
Yeah.
So
going bombs right now.
like it is like the exam request. If you're in VBMS, you look at the exam request and it's cringeworthy. And it's garbage in, garbage out. So I wouldn't be too worried about how they claimed it. The VA is supposed to get there. And again, like if they deny it, like this is a game of persistence. This is a game of persistence. The VA is a weird beast, man. Like it's persistence.
All right. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Persistence and evidence. I always tell veterans, focus on what you can control, which is gathering your evidence. Do that. VA will do VA stuff. You get evidence. All right, Ramon Arias, I probably butchered that. I filed for sleep apnea, and the VA sent me a message that I would be receiving a letter to see if I had more records. When I called, they said I wouldn't be receiving a letter, that they would be requesting my records from the VA. That was very difficult to read first, but
last shorthand.
Yeah, so basically you're saying that you're not getting a letter and the VA is requesting your records.
Yeah, 5103 notice is what we call them. The VA will send what's called a 5103 notice, and it's like a vague letter that's way too long and says like, we're working on your claim. Send us more records if you got them. And you're just looking at saying like, okay, which claim are you talking about? And any particular records? So it's, yeah, no, I feel your pain on that one. I have a video on that too. Like, you just got to read through it and see if there's asking for anything specific.
Oh yeah. Speaking of videos, you have a big one you have recently. A lot of VA raters have been walking out. There's a lot of new raters making huge mistakes on veteran claims. Do you have any insight to what the VA is doing for retention or hiring outside for new raters that implies these new raters are making mistakes?
It's so they hired a bunch of people to work the PACT Act claims, and they rushed them through training, and they pushed them through the training process, even if they were not. Some of them may be not quite qualified.
Numbers game, yeah.
You know, and I'm seeing a lot of very fast moving parts, and you know, you get scored on speed. Believe it or not, VA employees get scored on speed, not on accuracy. So I'm seeing a lot of I'm seeing asthma claims. It should be 100% rated 0. Got a couple of those. I see a couple of these cases where it's just like the headache stuff where it's like, I've missed a week of work per month for the last 10 years and they granted 0% because
0%.
So the DBQs are just block checks with like a little bit of spaces for narratives. And if you're trying to move fast, you just take the block checks and correlate that to a rating and push the thing out. But if you want to do a good job on it, you do a deep dive into the file. The DROs, decision review officers on higher level reviews, the good ones will do deep dives on files and find stuff that like you don't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
But they pay a price for that, and they're doing it because they're like, I'm just going to do my work as best I can because I'm doing this for the reasons I'm doing this from veterans. But again, there are a lot of folks who are scored on speed. They do some dumb shit, like just dumb shit. And it's a crucible. And people don't like it.
And it goes back to what we're always going to preach, which is evidence. Can you do anything about that? No, but if you have the evidence, you can always fall back on that with a higher level review, and that's assuming you get a solid rater to actually do the HLR with like an informal conference call, so to speak. Yeah. All right. Robert Lohman says, I got 50% for PTSD. Okay. I did agree. I did get okay. You did HLR, duty to assist error was found. I did another CMP and got 70. All right. Congrats on your appeal there. I didn't get back pay to the original date, just the date of the CMP.
Facts found bullshit. I don't know if you have the warning up for potty mouth language.
It's okay. You're good.
This is the so Robert, this is the facts found bullshit cop out that they keep doing, where they just ignore the fact that's been continuously pursued. They ignore the fact that you got another CMP exam because the first one was garbage, and they just give you a rating based on the last CMP exam, and they might have even given you an effective date of the CMP exam itself, which is insane, right?
Speed.
Now, here's the thing. Pro tip. Here's the thing. When you file a claim and you don't agree with it, you file a supplemental claim or you file a higher level review, right? And the higher level review goes, you're right, we screwed up. Let's do a DTA error and we're going to close out the higher level review and we're going to open it and we're going to do more development. Guess what? If you don't like that decision, you can file another higher level review because you're not filing a higher level review on a higher level review. You're filing a higher level review on the supplemental claim that came out of the higher level review.
Yep.
Now, why do I say all this? You can file a higher, if it's been less than a year since the rating decision, you can file a higher level review on the effective date. And when you talk to that decision review officer, you say, listen, the reason I had a new CMP exam was because the first CMP exam sucked. Like, that's the whole reason I filed a supplemental claim. All these issues existed. Like, and the reason, by the way, the reason they're giving you this new claim is they're saying, well, you weren't at 70% until the day we found it on that second CMP exam. And you're like, no, I had these problems way before that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wasn't requesting an increase. I was disagreeing with the last rating. So you can file a higher level review on that. And you can get the informal conference, get the person on the phone. It'll be a 5 to 10 minute call and say, listen, here's the backstory. I filed a higher level review on that one because the CMP exam was garbage. I've had all these symptoms. ever since I first applied, and even before then I had these symptoms. It wasn't the day of the C&P exam that they magically found them. You might have some luck with that. You might not.
No, completely agree.
If you don't have luck with that, you may consider taking it to the Board of Veterans Appeals. Just saying.
Yeah.
I might consider it.
What that looks like, Robert?
I can't say what to do in your particular case because I don't know, but these are things you might want to think about.
Yeah. What that looks like, Robert, is just going online. You can, when you put, are you filing a new claim or disagreeing? You check the disagreeing box. You'll go through the process. At some point, it'll say, do you want an informal conference call? That's the option you click, and that's how you submit a HLR. The whole thing takes about 10 minutes. Okay, super easy to do. Absolutely. All right. Secret Sauce says, for my previous question, my claim was migraines, GERD, and IBS, secondary to MDD with alcohol use disorder. This was talking about the medical opinion from Dr. Sharma. Yeah, Secret Sauce. So for the good thing is you have the evidence. That's the assumption coming from Doc. Your migraine claim, what I would recommend you do, there's a video on migraines. I'll post it down in the chat for you. It talks about how migraines are rated. GERD and IBS are going to share the same rating. The most common is 30% that we see. And then I'll share a video on IBS ratings as well. But it's really going to be constipation, abdominal cramps, and diarrhea. Okay, very quick on that one. Let's scroll down. I'm going to skip that one. Sergeant King says, hello, after you ETS on filing for benefits, do you have to have had your C&P within that or just within the year? So you're talking about BDD claims. First off, good on you for submitting a BDD claim. That's what every active duty service member leaving the military should do. To answer your question, no, not at all. Ideally, as far as speed and time goes, you want that. There's nothing you can do about it, but you want that finished so then you can not receive a DOD paycheck, receive a VA paycheck. That would be nice. That's the theory of BDDs. Now, does that always happen? Obviously, it does not. Tons of factors in that. Go ahead.
I've also found problems with BDD claims where somebody gets a provisional rating before they get out, and they get like another 3 more months of medical records that haven't been added to the file yet, and the DD-214 isn't in there yet. Like, I'm finding some crazy stuff where like there's a provisional rating that is just not accurate because there's still records that haven't been added to the file. So yeah, again, like if you apply, if you get out August 1st, 2023, and you apply July 31st, 2024, you're not gonna have your C&P exams for months, probably. You're fine. You're still gonna get that effective date.
Yeah, absolutely.
Usually. So.
And for those that are active duty or within that 1 year time frame, just as a general statement, I would say the sooner, the better. There's no reason to wait, especially if you're within that time frame. Get the evidence you have, submit the claims. Your life is going to be much, much easier now versus 10 years down the road. And you can probably ask 90% of everyone in this chat, and they'll probably agree. All right, Terry Klein with a $10 donation. Thank you, Terry. I definitely appreciate that. He says, what's good, Clay? Love what you do. I love you. Right. Thank you for that. If you have a question, definitely let me know. I will answer it in the chat. And then Chris Yates, thank you for being a member. He says, where do we get the CivDiv merch? This is something new. I didn't order that much. If you want any shirts or hats, just send me an email. And that's about it. And then we will go from there. Trinity621 says, first, thank you for being a member. He says, do I need to file a Nexus letter for congestive heart failure and had a DFib put in? Would I need a Nexus letter to file on the heart failure as connected to the PTSD?
No, you don't need a Nexus letter to file. You don't need a Nexus letter to appeal. Here what my suggestion might be in a case like this, right? Before you go spending money on a Nexus letter the VA is going to ignore, what you can do is file, if you go online, look for literature that connects, congestive heart failure to PTSD, and start pointing these things out. Now, ultimately, yeah, you might need a Nexus letter to connect all the dots, but again, as I said earlier, a Nexus letter is not the silver bullet. The VA ignores them all the time. So be prepared that even if you put in a Nexus letter, the VA might not grant it, but that doesn't mean you need to give up. You just need to make timely appeals. And, again, this, you may want to talk to an attorney for strategy on this, or get a good VSO. Like, listen, I charge a fee for my appeals. VSOs don't. I provide a little bit of a benefit over VSOs because I have fewer clients and better systems and more knowledge. I teach VSOs. And I get a lot of referral from VSOs, and the cases just get too complicated. But and I've also actually heard of a lot of VSOs giving terrible advice. So find a good VSO is the point.
Some are better than others for sure.
Yeah. By the way, a good VSO when they say, I don't have an answer to that question, let me look it up. If someone's really quick with an answer, that worries me because that means they probably haven't listened to the question. But the point is, a Nexus letter might be in your favor down the road. Just don't be discouraged if the VA kicks it back.
All right. Greg says effective dates are primo error territory. Absolutely. Effective date, they're wrong very commonly. One area where having a representative like Andy definitely comes in clutch. Thank you for that, Greg. Absolutely. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. Service connection. Listen, service connection, you throw enough evidence at the file and the VA should eventually grant. It's the effective date where things get real weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also, side note for you, Andy, it is 4 minutes till 8. So if you want to dip out at 8, just let me know. If you want to stay maybe
I got some more
8:30,
questions. Let's keep going. Finding good VSOs like trying to find a good attorney. I've been going worse.
QTC requested blood work. Also, Dr. Sharma put me in range for, it's something with the VA. Hey, the VA is not going to think that you're fraudulent. Okay, don't. Just because you got an IMO does not mean that you are indicative or implying a fraudulent claim whatsoever. Since Dr. Sharma wrote this, we are assuming you have the evidence, which you absolutely probably do have. The evidence will speak for itself. Go to your CMP exams. I know you've never been to one. I don't know how that's possible, but you'll be fine. Don't sweat it at all. All right, Jamie says, good evening. What's up? Can you provide the AI site you have suggested in another video? Use it to assist with preparing personal statements. Note on that, only as an outline, and I would only recommend that if you absolutely have zero clue how to construct a statement, okay? In no world would I ever copy-paste something from AI into a personal statement. If you want structure, an outline, or a template, that's fine. But generally speaking, for statements, you want to reference your evidence, reference between the lines of how that affects your daily life. That's about it. There's really no complicated method or secret template for a personal statement. Andy, do you have anything on that?
Anybody that tells you there's a secret template or tries to sell you a template for a statement is a huckster and a charlatan, and I will say that to their face. And then I will point at them and make fun at them for being a huckster and a charlatan who can't make money the honest way. That is, here's the thing. Personal statements, lay statements, 5 Ws, what's going on at the bottom. You have to be able to swear to it that it is the truth to the best of your knowledge, right? And it might be, this is what I remember. That's, again, it's got to be the truth. 5 Ws. There are a lot of good resources out there that tell you what you should include in a statement, but do not cut and paste from somebody else's personal statement. You got to do this with integrity. I know a lawyer talking about integrity. The jokes write themselves. Just do not cut and paste somebody else's stuff.
Oh yeah, and statements are something that we call a YouTube phenomenon, meaning people say it on YouTube because it gets them clicks. Don't pay attention to it. It's not that big of a deal. Write what's going on, reference your evidence. That's it. It could be a paragraph. It could be 3 paragraphs. Doesn't matter.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm sorry. I'm gonna caveat that. If you're talking about how severe a condition is, this is where you want to go to the DBQs. and go to the CFR and figure out how bad something is. So when I help a client write a statement, I ask them questions. Like, for instance, my questions for a migraine statement discuss the frequency and severity and the language the VA uses. Likewise, when I am doing a DBQ, like I love doing statements from family members for PTSD cases, because like the PTSD DBQ, right? You go in, that's a moment in time. They're not looking at all the times you didn't go to parties or couldn't go into Costco on a Saturday because it was too crowded, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or can't go into the grocery store except for 7 o'clock in the morning when no one's there, because that's the only time where you can go in without wanting your brain to explode. I take the DBQ and use that as a template, because there's going to list a bunch of symptoms. And this is where the family members can start putting in the symptoms and the anecdotes of the time that they had a panic attack at the mall. Then, you know, that is where like I get the inspiration and the questions to ask. But again, it's all the truth. I'm just figuring out what questions to ask to put on the statement.
All right. 100% agree. Bobby D's, thank you for the $2 super sticker. I appreciate it. She says, and it's a female, I promise. She says, "Hey Clay, I just wanted to let you know I submitted my claim. Andy, I love watching your videos." Okay, that's awesome.
Thanks.
They're so helpful. Just wanted to thank both of you for all you do. Thank you very much. We definitely appreciate that. And Keith, thank you for the $25. I definitely appreciate that. Thanks, Clay. A little something to help contribute to the growing channel. I definitely appreciate that, Keith. So much more than you know. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go back to Zero Caution. He says, "Eyeballs, I just filed for an increase on one of my disabilities 4 days ago. Do you have an idea on the turnaround are going to be?" I'll tell you this, Zero Caution. There ain't a single person on this planet that could give you an answer that's correct. If you want a roundabout, I would say 3 to 5 months generally. Yeah, that's it. That's what I got. That's how I can answer that. Do you have anything? Do you get a lot of questions on timelines?
Yeah, and I went like I told a client today it's going to be at least 2 more weeks before we get an answer out of this, and then I refresh on VBMS and the answer popped up, and I'm like,
okay. And
then I see something that has a suspense date of like May of this year, and nothing's happened. Like, no rhyme or reason.
No one knows. You know, it's not
national work queue. Who knows?
I'm not saying it's a dumb question. I'm just saying there's not a person on this planet that could give you an answer worth any salt. All right. Steph says, "Hi, what's up? Thank you for coming to the channel. Scrap guy, longtime fan. Thank you, Scrap. Appreciate it." Carolina Kid says, "I didn't claim anything when separating from active duty. Out of lies of my superiors, I palace chased into the Air National Guard. I was just wondering if I screwed myself out of disability." Short answer, no. Okay. I would say the medium answer would be I would look at your evidence from service of what that actually looks like, especially your active duty time. You are on the Air National Guard, and just to be very clear, you can still submit disability claims. You can have a rating and be in the Air National Guard without a doubt. Do you want to add to that, Andy?
I'm in the other National Guard, and I I got a rating.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Steph says probably should have an MOS, which is linked to asbestos exposure.
That helps.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Going back to our asbestos talk, 100%. All right. Tobin Whitman says, "Tomorrow my dependent claim hits the 6-month mark. Why is it taking so long?"
I don't know. Dependent claims are taking a really long time right now. My theory is that they've like taken people off those and try to put them on PACT Act. So there's just a little bit of a backlog I mean, I've seen them take 9 months. I have no idea why.
Absolutely. I know it sucks, but I'll tell you this: back pay does help for a reason. That's not going to make your situation better as far as time, but back pay will be awarded. Dependent claims are fairly easy. All right. Government Lackey says he's called the 800 number more times than I can count. Okay. It's useless. All right. I've had 3 calls on my apnea claim. All say hasn't been assigned. Wondering if my claim got lost in the void. Oh, you're referencing the submental claim taking forever. That's what it is. I'll tell you this, government lackey. VSOs with VBMS access could, if there's any correspondence between the VA, they would be able to see that and see where it's at, if it's moving at all. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, they don't get lost in the void, but they do take a long time.
Timelines, absolutely. It's definitely not. There's really no good answer when it comes to timelines whatsoever. All right, we have a few donations. Let me scroll down here. Dale Musselwhite, I probably butchered that. I apologize. Thank you so much. If you have a question, please put it down in the chat. I'll go ahead and read it. I don't see anything from you right now, Dale. Same thing with you, Robert. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Secret Sauce says, ask this before Super Chat. Sorry, spelling errors, no big deal. What is the best tip for CMP exam, even if you have a solid IMO and DBQ? Do I bring copies or let the nurse practitioner decide?
Bring copies.
Absolutely. Definitely bring copies, especially the DBQ. It's very digestible, how it's organized. That now definitely bring the IMO as well. And for your CMP exam, Secret Sauce, one's migraines. I would understand how migraines are rated. Just go to 38 CFR. If you Google CFR migraines, it'll pop up. Click it. Control F migraines. You'll find it right there. Exactly how the VA rates that. Same thing with GERD. And I think IBS was your last one. That's exactly what I would do. Just to calm some anxieties. And I'm sure some face on YouTube that does not help. But it's going to be fine. It's a CMP exam. You have the evidence. Breathe, relax, tell the truth. You'll be good. All right. Teacher Disciple with a $50 donation. Thank you very much. I definitely appreciate that. Where's my CivDiv shirts? Good to see you, bud. I'll show you this right now. This is the receipt with tracking numbers. After this live, I will send you an email, and thank you very much. And Dale, I don't see anything from you yet. If you do, just let me know. I'll check back in about 5 minutes. Okay. Back up all the way to the top. 76 Howdy. What's up? He says, I was drafted Army July in the 70s. Okay. Respect to you. They showed us old films of soldiers shot for deserting. All right. When I went to my physical, I had a left flat foot. The doc asked me if it hurt. I said, yes, drafted anyway. I think the implication there is for mental health. And if you can claim your flat foot, I'm just going to apply that question. Andy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, they were giving those 4 Fs out to only the I guess the landed gentry, but yeah, I mean, if this is about applying, then go ahead and apply. Like that's like don't hold out.
Absolutely, for sure. For U-76, continuity care would come into play. The significant time gap. Now, you are a Vietnam era veteran. The VA is very aware everyone's very aware when it comes to the notion of veterans going to the VA after service. But at a minimum, I would say talk to your primary care, get a complaint, get a diagnosis would be the golden ticket or would help you, and then submit the claim. Absolutely. All right. Angela says the VA totally sucks for rating headaches and migraines.
Fact.
Most common 0% rating. It's the most common 0% service-connected rating I see more than half the time. If someone has migraines, I could probably bet money it's 0%, and we would be up, millions of dollars. All right. You can see Big B said that's good info. One of the guys who works for me misses about 5 days a month for migraines and PTSD. And if he's service connected, that would be a solid indicator, or it's indicative of 50%.
Write him a note.
Absolutely.
If he works for you, I am I'm this guy's boss. He misses 5 days on average. Absolutely. All right. Kathy Mankin says, in the United States, back
in the late 60s, Agent Orange was sprayed on bases. My question is, how long does that pesticide stay on the ground, and would it affect a veteran many years later?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, Kathy, from a benefits perspective, if you have Agent Orange exposure and then you have a diagnosis connected to Agent Orange, that's as far as I would go from a veteran perspective. If you can claim your exposure and you have the diagnosis, submit the claim. All right. But as far as how long does Agent Orange in one place stay to technically be considered exposed, that I don't know.
That's a scientist question.
Yeah.
That's a scientist question.
All right. Seymour Breezy says, when reading through 38 CFR, which dictionary is best? I'm gonna deflect this one to you because I am lost in the sauce.
I'm a classic Black's Law Dictionary guy. It's tried and true, but that's more than just 38 CFR. That is just a day-to-day legal dictionary.
All right. I'm really glad that you knew that. Okay. You can see Big B with the 1775 with the Marine Corps birthday. Awesome. Also, happy early birthday to you. Appreciate that. Every year, my friends and I from the Marine Corps, we go camping, and we're actually camping in Maryland this year. I live in Northern Virginia, and so I will be in Baltimore on the 4th for a Silkies hike, believe it or not. All right.
Oh, the Reverend Warriors?
Yep, I'll be there.
Yeah, that's a fun group.
All right. Will you be there?
No.
Okay. All right. Jeffrey Miller, PhD, okay, Dr. Miller, assuming, embarked on the Bellawood Westpac in 2002. Then Bonnie Dick transport for invasion of Iraq in 2003. JP8 was in the lines both. Was lucky enough to get kidney stones recently. Shockwave busted guidance. I'm sure there's more to this. JP8 was in the potable. Okay. So you're saying that you were exposed to JP8, which is fuel. Do you have anything to add to or any response with this?
No, I mean you just gotta figure out what is your current condition that goes back to the, like, what did the JP8 do to you that is still lingering with you now, and try to go on the internet and find as much evidence as possible showing that JP8 was in the water lines. I'm sure people have written about it. So,
oh yeah, and it seems that you would rate the time criteria for PACT Act, so those would also apply too. So not just JP8, but I would look at Gulf War PACT Act era. Mm-hmm. I would say the most common sinusitis, rhinitis, asthma, bronchitis. Those are definitely going to be very common in that era. All right. Kevin Power says, how can I overcome PDHAs and PDHRAs, pre and post-deployment health assessments? That does not mention my TBI events. TBI diagnosed after service. Didn't want to bring up anything about it during service due to negative career effects. My first question is, how long after service were you diagnosed? I know you've emailed me in the past. I've probably asked you that question. I forgot. But that would be my first question. My second would be, is there anything outside of your PDHAs indicative of a TBI, like a safety report if you fell off the truck and got knocked unconscious, right? That would be an example of other evidence outside your PDHA. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, right about what happened, right?
Yeah.
Were you a mortarman, right? Were you a mortarman and shooting off rounds, especially, if you're in a mortar carrier where you're basically in a coffin shooting off mortars? Were you subjected to multiple blasts? We didn't know as much as we do now about those blasts. So start writing about what happened and when he started experiencing symptoms. TBIs are actually interesting because and I actually work with a neurologist on this for a while. It's not like you can stick somebody in a machine and detect most TBIs. Like, most MRIs do not detect TBIs unless they're really severe. They're detected by asking the patient what happened and asking the patient the symptoms, and then deducing the two. You can figure, the neurologist might say, yeah, I think you had a TBI, right? So again, this is where the lay evidence goes. Like I was, I was a field artilleryman, and we were putting rounds down range. We were putting warheads on foreheads day in and day out. We were doing fire missions, like you wouldn't believe, right? Multiple concussive blasts. The truck in front of me got blown up. Like, I fell off a truck, right? Like, and again, for a lot of folks, you're like in your early 20s, you get your bell rung, you might not tell anybody right away. So I got plenty of folks who have TBIs years after service that we get service connected. You just gotta explain what happened and explain the symptoms.
Absolutely. All right. Going back to Dale from the donation. I appreciate that, Dale. He says, Clay, last week I received a 60% rating for dermatitis. Okay. 10% tinnitus, 0% for rhinitis. Thanks for all your help. My attorney appealed my depression claim to the board without my approval. What to do? That's your lane.
Ask your attorney why they did that. I mean, I don't like, if you got an attorney, I'm not like, just ask them what's going on.
Yeah, I would definitely say just be transparent, open that line of communication. And I'm going to assume that, they have your evidence, and we'll probably give them the benefit of the doubt just on that action alone. Yeah. Lori T, thank you so much. I definitely appreciate that for the $20 donation. I don't see a question from you, but if you have one, throw it down in the chat. Let me just check one more time. And all right, nope. Let's go back up to the top. Way back up to the top. We are up here. All right. Steph Saint says, Raider here. Okay. Welcome to the channel. I definitely appreciate
Thank you.
Any VA employees coming. Transparency and helping educating veterans. That's the goal.
No, I appreciate so what Steph is, just to add some context, when a rater goes in to pull records, they do something called, it's through the CAPRI system or Joint Legacy View or whatever, and they can search for certain conditions, and then they'll pull over like only records that maybe apply, and they can be sort of selective. So when a rater just goes in and just scrapes them all, like, that's great stuff. That really helps preserve the file, and makes it easier for everybody, I think.
Oh yeah, and to add to that, he says every time. So awesome. All right, Jason Dean says, I submitted evidence from neck test done in Indianapolis, VA, for COPD and asthma from Fayetteville. Will VA records from another? Yes, VA's the VA. Don't worry about it. That's definitely not something to sweat. It's absolutely in there. If you want to, you can download your Blue Button report. It will all be in there. 15
years ago, that wasn't the case, but it is now.
All right. I did not know that, and thank you. All right. Master Doc says, service connected for Morton's neuroma, plantar fasciitis, secondary to flat feet, but only given 10% for it. Should I submit an HLR for plantar fasciitis and flat feet? So you have 2 foot conditions, wrote together at 10%. HLR, my first question is, what are your symptoms? And do you meet the higher criteria? And does the VA have that evidence?
Do you use orthotics? I have so many questions to ask. I do know, I believe plantar fasciitis and flat feet can now be rated separately. They don't pyramid anymore, I think. This is one of those things that I got to look up every time, because they're, but yeah, that's tough. That's a tough question. It depends on the facts.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Mick Williams says, how can I get a one-on-one consult with you or member of your team? He's talking to you. Also, in submitting a claim for, that's a skin condition, I can't say it, the CFR lists the rating at 60% when using biologic drugs. Should I list the CFR? Looking at skin, go ahead.
I've got one of these right now.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of these right now where they listed the drug biologic, but the CMP doctor didn't know what it was, so they didn't check the box for biologic. So, you have a couple different, like, it depends what's on the CMP exam. It really depends. Like, you might have to submit a supplemental claim with evidence of what the drug is, because the CMP doc didn't know. So you go to the drug's website, you print off a thing. You might have to upload that with a supplemental claim, because they can't review that new evidence on a higher level review. It So it depends. One-on-one consult is that number 443-846-0740. We can
Hold
take a
on.
look at your file.
There we go. All right. I feel cool whenever I hit the button. Okay, here we go.
Technology.
Edwin says, will SMCT come automatically when you get service connected for TBI, or do you have to apply separately? So TBI doesn't presume any SMC at all. It's case by case in your symptoms. Do you want to add to that?
So this is controversial because SMC is complicated, but not. And it's kind of like TDIU. TDIU is not a claim, right? SMC is not a claim. It is part and parcel of the rating that they're supposed to give you. Now the VA has made this big deal where they have to, like, you have to have an 8940 to file TDIU and an SMC. You need the 2680 form or something. I don't know. I don't remember anymore. It's late at night. You don't have to apply separately. SMCT though only applies if you meet the criteria for aid and attendance in addition to having a TBI. And this is like the rough guidelines. Should it apply automatically? Yes. However, you sometimes need to get the VA there for you because they may not pick up on the fact that you have these additional needs. Much like, because it's not on the questionnaire, right? So for the TBI questionnaire, it's not necessarily on there. So sometimes if you think that you are in that criteria where like you have the need for SMCT, just go ahead, preemptively file that 2680, or, let the VA know some other way through some other form, like either a supplemental claim or if the evidence of your need is already in the record, you file a higher level review. It just depends. You can't go wrong with starting off with that 2680 form because that's going to end up needing to be documented anyway.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. All right. Set the Hook says, what is the difference between combat PTSD and in-service PTSD? What is needed to file the claim? What you got?
Functionally, not really either. So combat PTSD, it was like you're there and the doctor links your PTSD to fear of getting blown up, right?
Yep.
By the bad guys. It's got to be by the bad guys, right? If you're the other stuff, you have to get a little bit more detailed as to what the stressor is. So if it was like you were in a car accident, CONUS, just driving around base, and you're in a bad car accident, right? You might have to explain a little bit about that stressor and corroborate that stressor with some other buddy statements, news articles, what have you. But just the DD-214 that says like imminent fire pay, and then that's enough, functionally speaking.
Absolutely. It does get a little weird when you talk about MST. I assume that's not what you're referring to. That becomes a little weird. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't disregard just claiming mental health, right? Because the depression, anxiety, making it broad. Generally speaking, I like to see veterans make specific claims. For instance, like plantar fasciitis. Instead of saying foot condition, I would be specific there. When it comes to mental health, personally, I would just say mental health. The VA will do the
psychiatric condition.
Right? Yeah. The VA will do VA things. Don't worry about that. If it's PTSD, just say PTSD. Okay. Whether it's combat or in service or MST, PTSD. If it's MST, that definitely go down that route. That has its own stuff with it. Okay. Discuss anomaly cases. I'm going to assume this is, what this is, because I do not.
Like, if this is like the craziest cases I've seen, it's where I call them 3.156C cases, where service department record rule, where the VA made a decision, and then 20 years later, the service department records show up, and that changes the decision, and you get an earlier effective date by sometimes 20 years. I've got 2 or 3 of those that are really quite big now, where the VA made a decision, and then 30 years later, like 500 pages of records show up that totally change the perspective on this case. Those can be pretty big. I would say there's some really odd conditions when it comes to like various fungal infections, like coccidiomycosis or something. It's like a valley fever. It's what happens in the Southwest. It can like wreck your spine. I mean, we get some weird stuff, like just stuff I've never heard of. I mean, there's a lot of like training accidents, people falling, bad jumps, what have you, but some weird stuff. I mean, yeah.
All right. Once a Marine 95 says currently service connected 10% for each knee. They were prescribed knee braces. Will the knee brace prescriptions by itself be enough to justify the increase?
Maybe. So if with knees, it's funny, right? So knees, you can get rated both for range of motion loss and for instability. And those are two separate ratings. And the knee braces are usually the red flag for like there's some sort of patellar instability or what have you. And that gets you that separate rating. Now, I like to argue, sometimes successfully, that if you have a knee brace, it's not just for pain or it's so bad that it's functionally equivalent to the instability rating and thus deserves the next higher rating. That's a tough argument to make sometimes, but I do it anyway because,
I also recommend the same thing. I completely agree.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe.
Yeah. If you look at the 38 CFR, you'll see the assistive device and it lists them out in both 10 and 20. So to answer your question directly, it's no, but it is indicative that your condition is worse enough to need one, right? Which could imply a higher than 10% rating, but it just depends. All right. Is it hard to connect neuropathy secondary to stroke?
I'm not a doctor, so it's got to be a doctor that does that, right? Like what's causing it's don't think of it as connecting. Think of it as what's the symptom of this condition that I have, right? Example, right? Diabetes. Diabetes is not one condition as far as the VA cares. Diabetes is a lot of diabetes and just diabetes. It's diabetes and diabetic neuropathy, diabetic retinopathy, frequency voiding, right? A lot. That's a hidden gem. If you get up to pee a lot at night, that's like 30% rating right there. So like pressure ulcers, recovering from those. You might think those are symptoms of diabetes, and they are, but the VA considers them secondary. So I think that you should think about, and this is where it pays to know about how the CFR works and what's a condition. Think about like, okay, what's wrong with me after I've had this stroke, and what's a condition of that? And do I have to claim I'm going to claim that as a secondary condition potentially?
Yeah. When it comes to secondaries, and I think this is another YouTube phenomenon because everyone talks about secondaries. And the easiest explanation I'll use is migraine secondary to tinnitus, which is common. A question I always ask veterans is, does your tinnitus cause migraines? Just because this person's does has nothing to do with your migraines and tinnitus.
Yeah, it's the claim sharks. It's
not checking the box, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's different than say like cancer causing anxiety, right? If you got a cancer diagnosis, you might have some anxiety after that because your body is trying to kill you, right? Yeah, and that's fair. And a lot of people don't like. A lot of people will claim cancer, but then forget to claim the anxiety. And I'm like, no. Like you should probably be in counseling and talking to somebody because this is some scary shit, right?
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Says Clay, what's up? I'm getting ready to go to a C&P exam for cervical and lumbar spine. Should I bring a blank DBQ to make sure that all the questions were asked by the examiner? I'm going to say no, and it's really a personality thing. I could see an examiner getting upset. But to be honest with you, I wouldn't assume the examiner's not going to ask you all the questions on the DBQ. I would just go about it, okay? A question I would ask is, did you claim radiculopathy? Especially in the lumbar spine, it's very, very common for even a 10% radiculopathy rating would come in clutch, especially if it's both. But to answer your question, I wouldn't recommend it, and I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you have ridiculous, like if you have like the tingling sensation, like if for me, my left hand, like things are heavier in this hand for some reason. It's because my neck, right? Like if you have that weird like tingling or numbness or heaviness in your arms and legs, and you think it might be related, mention that to the CMP doctor. But if the CMP doctor doesn't ask, just get that uploaded into your claims file so that you let them know, like, hey, the CMP examiner never asked me about my radiculopathy. Also, make sure you are telling, if you are going to a doctor for your back, make sure that the doctor is writing down that you also have radiculopathy if you have it. If you don't have it, don't lie, but you would.
Absolutely. QTC examiners are by and large incompetent, especially here in the Philippines. I assume VA claims already suck. VA claims abroad have to really suck. And I don't understand how you're dealing with that, Scott. But Scott and I have been back and forth through email for about a year now. So absolutely. All right. Tracy Herring says RDL dated November 22, Q stating proposing reducing disability from 60 to 40. If reduced, am I obligated to pay back the difference? Haven't heard from them since. What do you got?
Potentially.
November. I want, off the top of my head, I want to say there's a, because that's last year. Okay, I think if it's more than 6 months, that might change.
And there's due process involved. It's yeah. I don't. Yeah, lots of potentially. I mean, potentially. I can't say for certain.
All right, Mark Boothman says, I filed Cop D claim due to PACT Act. Okay. I'm on that twice daily with inhaler. Am I interpreting rating that being on the steroids daily rates me at 100% daily? I'd have to check the Cop D. Is that what you're doing right now?
I think it's 60. I will tell you though, these respiratory PACT Act claims are getting the wrong ratings left, right, and center. I'm seeing a lot of zeros that should be higher. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. COPD is actually rated based on the FEV, the pulmonary function test, generally speaking. I think.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I'm glad this is an open book test because, yeah.
I don't see here. I will share my screen just so you see what we are looking at.
I do have to call it a night in a couple minutes though. So
okay, perfectly okay. I'll probably do the same. My wife is actually texting me right now. All right. So this is what Andy's referring to. I'm going to put this link down there in the chat for you so you can look at it. Just word search pulmonary and it'll pop up. All right, let me do this real quick.
This is the problem though. Your CMP, your rating decisions oftentimes don't actually have your PFT scores on them. So, and then it'll say, I read one the other day where it was like, we didn't rate you higher because the next higher rating needs this. But then you look at the DBQ and you're like, that's what they had, right? And I was talking to the DRO and the DRO's like, what happened? Like the DRO's like, I don't understand what happened here. Like, how did this happen? So this is a tough one, where if you know what your PFT scores are, or if you have a pulmonary function test from an outside agency or what have you, from outside doctor, you know what those scores are, it might be time to appeal that somehow, whether higher level review or submental claim. I don't know about your individual circumstance. So.
Oh yeah. But everyone, thank you for coming to the live stream. I definitely appreciate that. Andy, thank you for coming on the stream and just educating veterans. Thank you for what you do. Definitely appreciate that. Everyone, his office number is down below, 443-846-0747. And then you said they could also email you?
0740. You can go to my website. You can go to my website, APGrossLaw.com. We're actually going to rebrand soon. We're going to become Guide on Legal, leading veterans to the benefits they've earned. How do you like that, right? It's a little motto going, right? Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to rebrand soon, but the number is going to be the same, APGrossLaw.com. I'm on YouTube, and you can find me there.
All right. And I'll also link the YouTube channel down below in the chat. Andy, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for coming out. And till next time.
This has been fun. Have a good one.
All right. Same. Later, Andy.
Whiskey 9 Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. And 8 o'clock, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go. I copied a while ago, 1 Charlie transmission that my thing used, and 8 5, this is 7 November, Charlie. 8 5 right now. Now 1 Charlie, 7 November, go.
This is 1 Charlie, in reference to your last, you're Brandon 158, extra 5 o'clock, 1200 between teams, that's local. Also request your unit take outbound methods to see if we can try to get Whiskey 9 and 8 for pause at the playground.
And this is 7 November, Roger, stand by.
Got that?
Got it? Alright. And all units, this is 7 November Golf. My unit Alpha, Echo, X-ray Alpha in there.
One Charlie, Alpha Bravo.
Hey, I never took a dip. I forgot to take a dip.
Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9 Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Whiskey 9 Yankee, 7 November Golf, over. Whiskey 9, 7 November, interrogative Alpha Bravo. Negative Alpha Bravo. And this is 7 November Golf. Roger, request you check your Romeo side. I'll go ahead and check my Tango side. 7 November Golf out. And 8 o'clock, 7 November, say again. 7 November, go.